for the book sale. Both close at 5:15. Everybody's got to be paid for again by 5:30. I know it's repetitious, but it's the way it is. All right. Cell phones, of course, please silence them. I also want to remind you all of the SMG, Seattle Metals Guild, of course, Biennial, which opened officially last evening. It is in the gallery at North Seattle College. It is open through November 3rd, Monday through Thursday, 11 to 5, and Fridays from 11 to 2. I've heard very, very, very good things about it. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Kurt Lang to come up and introduce our next speaker.
Hello again, everyone. Thomas, this is the last time I'll be up here. Okay. So, our next speaker is, as they say, a Renaissance man. From jewelry to sculpture, from teacher to business owner, Michael is a busy guy. In fact, when I first met him in New York while eating lunch, he kept checking his phone to monitor his many rapid prototyping machines from afar. Those machines were making his well-known Perf and Burrow brand jewelry tools several states away while he was in New York exhibiting and selling his jewelry. At that same lunch, he mentioned an upcoming speaking engagement he had, but then said he really wanted to speak at the Seattle Metals Guild Symposium sometime. He had no idea I was on the planning committee, and when I told him, he laughed for a minute and simply said, "It is what it is." Well, Michael, here you are and here we are. Michael teaches, lectures, and shows his work both nationally and internationally. He has received numerous awards for his jewelry and sculpture, including an acquisition prize from the Museum of Art and Design in New York for his iconic bracelet, Anbara, which is now part of the permanent collection. Please help me welcome Michael Nashef.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully I'll be able to wake you up after the lunch and sitting outside in the sun. So I did not know that you're going to say this. That was actually pretty good. Can't believe it. All right. So we're going to start with this here. I'm actually from a country called Lebanon. It's this little tiny country between three big continents, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Lebanon is a very, very small country. It literally can fit 946 Lebanons in the United States. And contrary to anyone who thinks that we're from the Middle East and we don't have snow, we have tons of snow in Lebanon. And the reason it's called Lebanon is because Lebanon comes from the word Leban, which translates to yogurt, as in the snow, milky mountains, voila, you know. So that's where I'm from, and I've been here pretty much for quite a while, since 1998. And I started my journey as a bench jeweler in 1999, beginning of 1999, and I was a bench jeweler for a little bit, and at that time I was studying computer science, which I liked it, but it wasn't me. It wasn't like, sitting down on a computer just coding all day or whatever. Did not really enjoy it. And while I was working as a bench jeweler, I received a magazine that said, bachelor degree in jewelry and metal design. I was like, wait, you could do that? I mean, coming from Lebanon, all I knew, like, you could be an engineer or a computer scientist or a doctor or whatever. I didn't know that you can get a bachelor degree in fine arts. So I went to Grand Rapids, Kendall College of Art and Design, and I was the first graduate in their program in 2006. So after that, I did a lot of, I managed a jewelry store, and I did a lot of kind of like personal work where I would sell to friends, acquaintances, commissions, things like this. And I was working with CAD and software most of the time, which allowed me to usually do a lot of designs, but without really spending a lot of money in just making the piece. Not to say that I didn't know how to do it, I did, but I just was able to, show it to the customer before I would make it. And then I did a little bit more like your typical production work with diamonds, gold, sapphires, you name it, I have my own line. And during that time, I actually did, I was teaching at Kendall from 2005 to 2010. I really enjoyed teaching. It was a lot of fun, but as you guys know, like any tenure track or any full-time position, you do need to have a master's degree or a tournament degree to teach at university. So that's when I decided I was gonna go to Bowling Green State University. I got a full ride scholarship there, and it was close to where I was living. I was married at that time, and I decided that it's, it makes sense for me to go do a 2-year degree, to get my degree, have it on paper, because at that time my technical skills were there, but my conceptual work wasn't as strong as I would like it to be, right? So I did that. I started under Tom Muir, which was, if anybody knows Tom Muir, you probably know what I'm talking about. He's definitely a character, and it's awesome to work with him and study underneath him. So that was a lot of fun, and that's when I kind of started doing a little bit more conceptual work. And some of the work that I've done here is a little bit different. At the beginning, I was still doing some work with like the gold and silver that I was accustomed to do. And this is basically kind of to showcase, this piece is called Restraint Ring. It has like the tiniest universal hinges you will ever see. The idea of it is basically, I tend to say whatever is on my mind, I don't hold back. And the idea is like you can turn these little knobs that you see there, right? And it will tighten, and you can put your tongue in there with the hinge, and it will tighten and grab your tongue so you don't say whatever you want to say at any point. Which was, a lot of fun. I did, a couple of pieces like this, and I was kind of encouraged to explore different materials and different ideas, which I started doing, and obviously I was like, okay, maybe it's time to kind of branch out a little bit more. So that's when I kind of started experimenting with some resins, 3D printing, and this is a ring that kind of lights up. It has fluorescent resin in it. You wear it, and the idea was a little bit more of a, the word I'm looking for, like kind of like when you're out at night, you want to protect yourself or be seen or whatever. So this will kind of light up and kind of let people know that you're there. And this is another piece here which I did. It's a belt buckle. And again, back to Tom Muir, who kept on saying like, oh, don't use CADs, it's not organic, blah, 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 all these things, which it was probably true 20 or 30 years ago. Nowadays, CAD is as organic as you want it to be. So I decided I wanted to tell him to duck off a little bit, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I ended up doing the duck, which is a belt buckle that has my actual hand, a copy of my actual hand in there. And if you notice that there's a mechanism there, if you click on the feather on the back of the duck, that thing just opens like this, showing the bird, I guess, the duck in there. But it was a lot of fun. So this project was really, really fun. And I always say I should bring it with me when I'm doing a presentation, and I always forget. So maybe next presentation. And then toward the end of my master's, we had a great class that was about eyewear. I was like, I guess petrified. I was so scared to take that class. I don't know why. I'd never done anything like this. And I figured I was like, I can't do eyewear. Like, I don't know how to do that, never done it, right? But it was the most fun I've ever had in a class. We were supposed to do 3 total eyewear in that project. I ended up doing 5. And this here is all handmade. This is brass. These are brass stitches in bloodwood with, I don't have an image of the hinges, but they are like the tiniest hinges you can ever see. It's really nice. The other one was also handmade, and this is when I want to kind of showcase my hand skills and my work. This eyewear was in the Beijing Fashion Show, and it's in the Gems book. I think it's in the first Gems book. Everything you see here was handmade, hand fabricated, including, you know, bending the acrylic, all that stuff. And that was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to wear, actually. And I really enjoy it. This is another one, handmade. And then I decided I want to give myself a little bit of like a challenge with the computer, where I decided I wanted to make a eyewear that I don't have to do anything to it. All I have to do is design it on the computer and hit print and just peel it completely off the platform of the printer and put two little tiny rods in here, if you see that, and I will have the glasses. And I did. So this whole thing is basically all done in one print, and it's called In a Pig's Eye. We were supposed to kind of take an idiom, and the idea is when you see people, you know, I don't know if you guys know what the idiom is, in a pig's eye, meaning you're full of BS. So that was a little bit of a political statement there, but and which brings us to this eyewear here. This is made out of concrete. This was my first ever concrete work. This was the most fun I've ever had. So what happened was, during that class, Jim Cotter comes in and he gives a presentation or a kind of like visiting artist demo in our school. And he showed us this material that he uses, which is the concrete. And I don't know, I just fell in love with it. It was awesome to play with. It was great to work with. And considering that I'm from Lebanon, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about this, you guys will know why probably I like this material. I decided, the idea of a project was to create a facade, an eyewear that has a, you know, like, what's your understanding of facade? And I was like, what would be great is like if I made an eyewear that at the beginning of it is so nice and clean, and the further you go back, you'll see like destruction and damage and so on. And it's kind of like the idea of how sometimes people might be where, you know, you talk to them for 2 seconds and you might say, oh, they are great, and they could be emotionally damaged or broken or whatever toward the end, and you didn't know that because they are putting this facade. So end up doing this. I believe it also was in the Gems book. I think it's the second season or second edition or whatever. So that leads me to kind of like what I did my thesis work, and when I kind of did my what I'm going to show you next, right? So on a serious note, this is basically the Lebanon that I grew in. Buildings that are bombed, riddled, ruins. Reasons that I'm mentioning this is not to make you, you know, feel bad for me, or like, you know, to feel like, oh my God, like, you know, he was in a bad situation, which I was, but it's irrelevant, right? Civil War in Lebanon started in 1975 and it ended in 1990, 1991. And in 8 years after 1990, this is what we were stuck with. Because if you guys know, like, it takes a lot of time to rebuild stuff, right? You can't just, you know, think about it now. Like, even when you have a bridge that you want to fix, it takes 2 or 3 years to fix a bridge, right? It just naturally takes this long. So even if the war was done in the 90s or beginning of 90s, I didn't see anything rebuild till the 1998, 1999, but at that time, I had left there to come here in 1998, right? So why am I showing you these images? Not to get any sympathy or to, again, to make you feel bad, but to help you understand why making the work that I did meant so much to me and why making them the way I did was important. When we talk about concrete, we did not talk about its resilience. Concrete is strong, hard, stiff. It does not give, and definitely not resilient. But when these buildings were broken, damaged, and seemed crumbling, their function was resilient, right? They stood as metaphorical containers or vessels for us humans. They allowed us to stay in them after they were damaged or broken. If you guys notice that literally, I mean, this is not us, but might as well, I could have had an image or a photo like this, but this is basically where everyone lived, right? Like there was so much damage or destruction. I mean, you could see life is continuing to happen there, and look at all of these are all bullet holes, or like, you know, these big gashes there are RBGs, or this balcony fell completely over, and all they did is just put bricks in there to make it functional. Or even up here, you could see the splatter of the shrapnel there, right? So even with all the damage, life continued or sustained in these buildings, and they did their job. And I never really thought about this kind of stuff till I started working with concrete, and I felt how nice it is to work with it, and how flexible or how different it was when I was doing the glasses. So for me to be content with the pieces or vessels that I'm making, I knew that they needed to have these three attributes, right? So I end up making vessels out of concrete, and they needed to have three attributes for me to kind of pay homage to the buildings that kind of protected us. They needed to be in a vessel form, just like the buildings are for humans, right? Like a vessel will contain something, the building contained us humans in it, right? They needed to be functional after being damaged. That meant watertight. Same way buildings sheltered us even when they were damaged. So every single piece or vessel I'm gonna show you, you're gonna see tons of damage, or you're gonna see damage in it. However, these will still retain water. I either included hidden compartments or just like somewhat cleverly kind of hide or break it in a way where even if it's damaged like that, when you put water in it, it will actually function as a normal vessel, right? And lastly, it was supposed to be made out of concrete, just like how the majority of the buildings in Lebanon are made, right? The material was very important. A lot of people would ask me like, why don't you use ceramics? I was like, I could, but you're missing the point here, right? The point is to kind of first, to me, it started as a challenge, right? It started as a challenge for me, like, can I make things out of concrete, including, you know, obviously install metal in it and make all these details in metal, but can I make it work? And that's basically a journey that I did with this that allowed me to create these really complex, or at least vessels that I like. So I'm going to talk about the process a little bit before I show you the images. So first thing you will notice is that in this image here, you're going to see that, oh, there's the concrete, but then he went and he painted on the surface of the concrete to make this decoration. It's not. This is actually concrete inlaid in concrete. This is dyed concrete, so this is not the paint on the surface. If you zoom enough, you will see in some areas, actually this is a really good position here. If you look at this, you'll see that the concrete, the blue stuff is a little bit dug inside there. And that was important to me because I wanted to imitate the tile work that you usually see in some of the areas. And although I don't have a lot of tile work in some of my vessels, but like that's something I wanted to include or figure out, right? So for me to accomplish that, I actually did not find any easy documentation about concrete and dyeing it and things like this. So I started experimenting, and I did tons of experimentation. And at one point, like I was using ink toner, the inkjet toners in there, and it wasn't giving me a good result. Then I was like, maybe if I use the actual laser, you know, the black laser toner that you have. And to my amazement, it worked. It made my concrete black, which was awesome. And I found out that that kind of stuff is made out of iron oxide. And at that same time when I was doing this, I ended up taking a class, a ceramics class. And I found out, the first class we were sitting in, I was taking it with John Balistreri. I don't know if any one of you guys know him, but he's a well-renowned or known ceramicist. And he goes like, oh, well, you know, guys, he talks like this, very slow. He has a deep voice. He's like, you know, ceramics are, you know, you need to be careful with them. The glazes are very toxic. You have the iron oxides, you have this. And I was like, wait. I don't know where I stopped him from talking. And I was like, you're telling me that I have the iron oxides, all the material here that I needed to dye my concrete, and I didn't know that? He's like, yeah. He's like, I was like, can I use it? He's like, absolutely. Why don't you, start experimenting? And this is kind of like what I got from there. And I was getting all these nice, vibrant colors that made kind of like my dream come true in kind of figuring out what I needed to do. Which, that was the first step of my kind of like research. And then I went into how to make the molds, right? Like that's a huge issue. And the issue is when you're doing clay is, I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it doesn't dry in 10 or cure in 10, 15 minutes, right? Clay, you work it, you go, you cover it with a bag of whatever, like a plastic bag, you go do your thing, take lunch, sit in the sun, come back, and then you come and work with it, right? Well, with concrete, you literally have a window of 10 to 15 minutes to do the work, and that's it. So that's something you need to consider. And the other issue is that, okay, I'm coming up with all these designs that are organic or different in shape or, has these curves. So I was like, how am I gonna make concrete work the way I want it to, not the way it wants to work? So that's when I go into basically using computers and 3D printers, which I was using before, but I kind of like, expanded my push into it a little bit more. And I start kind of coming up with like these really complex molds that allows me to pour concrete and just pull them out and have the design that I want. So this is basically, you see like this is a 2-part mold here. That's when you put it in. And you'll see, if you notice that line will end up being the hidden wall where there's 2 compartments in there. One I will break and one will retain the water. Then I will pour the concrete in there, I'll let it cure, and once it's cured, I'll pull it out. And when I pull the concrete out, you can see that this is half of the vessel in there, and when the other half is done, I put them together. And this is, so you can pour water from here and it will stay in there, right? And when I put the whole thing together, this is still closed. But that's when I kind of break this again and make it happen. Now, to do the design on it, I also didn't know what the hell I'm doing. This is all kind of like new to me. I had no idea how am I gonna do this. I was like, yeah, I could paint it, but that defeats the idea of kind of imitating the tile work and so on. So I did some experimentation and I found out that, okay, I could literally actually probably use sandblasting, which it worked because, I would cut these vinyls and actually went cross-eyed trying to clean this. But the nice thing about vinyl and sandblasting is I could literally kind of lay it on top of whatever curved surface I have, and then I can sandblast it, and when I sandblast it, I get this pattern in there that is recessed, right? So after you sandblast it and I get this recessed area, what do? I actually take whatever color concrete I want, I put it in there, I kind of squeegee it down, and then you start sanding, and oh my God, like it is amazing. It was kind of like, I've done it before, I did a quick test, like how it's gonna work, but it looked good, but I knew I was getting better. But this was like one of the first kind of big projects, and it was all blue, and I didn't know how it was gonna look, and you sand it down, and like you start seeing the design, and I was like, oh my God, yes, it's amazing, it works, right? So this is basically when it was all put together. You could see like the difference of the whole side, the whole thing. I should have taken another one, and you can see in the background, I was actually starting to, they asked me to make some of my vessels in actual ceramic. So I started making these slip cast molds, and I made them. It was my first experience with that. So once you do something like this and you spend anywhere, I don't know, between 4 to 5 months doing a vessel, what do? You shoot it. Is it happening? Why is it stopping? Oh no! Is it? Oh, it is. You're right. You're right. Let me tell you what. It's the most nerve-wracking experience you'll have in your life, because I literally spend months on this, right? So I wrote something here, and this is what I have. I said, relinquishing of control talks to the technicality and conceptuality of these vessels. All my planning and hard work actually comes down to 1 second where everything changes and it defines how the vessel will look, which if you know me, you know that this is a very hard thing to do. I love control. I'm a little bit OCD. I like to control every aspect of my world. The image on the right is actually basically one of the reasons why I chose to do this, because if you notice here, this is an old building. This is a building from the 1950s and 60s in Beirut, right? This image was taken in 2019, Christmas of 2019. We went down there, me and my family, we were in Beirut, and you could see that there's still bullet holes in these older buildings that are not being repaired or, fixed. However, next to it is a super modern building, right? Designed by Zaha Hadid, which she's an Iraqi architect. She's very well known. She's deceased now, but I really love her work. But you could see like how they are juxtaposed next to each other. And that's one of the reasons with my vessels, I was putting a little bit of a modern twist or design on them at the same time, right? So this is basically, what happened. And then when I shoot these vessels, by the way, and I got a lot of questions like, why do you shoot the vessels and not use a hammer or break them? Great question, because if I'm using a hammer, I assure you I'm going to control where the blow is going to be and how much I'm going to break from it. But if I'm actually using the gun or whatever, the BB gun or whatever I'm trying to use, I truly surrender in control, right? Like I have no control over what the result is going to be, and I have to work that into my design. So this is another design that I have that it has a lid on the top. It's called tin roof because we had a house, my grandma had a house that literally had a tin roof on top of it, right? Like, so, I tried to imitate that a little bit, and you can see that there's like breakage in there, and all the metal work that you see there is pretty much hand fabricated and handmade. Including the rebar, obviously not the tubing, but that's basically it. This is a detailed shot of that. This is called stay away or step away from the window. The idea of this was when we were kids, anytime there would be shooting, as kids, you don't hide, especially if you're used to this kind of stuff, you go see what's happening, and we're always getting yelled at by our parents to step away from the window because there's a lot of stray bullets. And a lot of kids had died in Lebanon just from that, like, or even adults. But you know, kids would go to the window or whatever, and somebody shooting, or their stray bullets or whatever, and bullets will fall and they will kill or injure kids. This is called Grandma's Gate. This, you could see that in this area, for instance, there's some remnants of the chart or the nozzle, the tip of the nozzle in there. My grandma's house also, which was a very old house, it was, I think, built in the 1930s or 40s, even before that. Like, no joke, the walls are this thick, and they are just like blocks of stone, right? She had a gate, and, oh, actually it's here. And kind of like, this was kind of like the motif on the gate that leads to the house. This here is Byblos by the sea. Funny story in this. Okay, and kind of a push for some artists and like always follow your God. I did this design, and the first time I did this design, I had this kind of in-your-face yellow. I love color, I don't mind vivid colors. So I'm showing my colleagues, I was like, hey, what do you think? There's this yellow color that I have or whatever. And they're like, no, we don't like it, it's too strong, too vivid. So I was like, okay, maybe they know better, whatever, right? So I make another one. It's a little bit toned down. It kind of looked like a puke yellow. I didn't like it. But I was like, they might know better. I'll leave it. And then fate would have it. I am on Facebook, and somebody posted an image. I don't know, like some friend or acquaintance or whatever. They post an image of a house in Byblos, like in one of the oldest cities in the world, right? That literally the walls, kid you not, is as yellow as this is. So in some sense, what I'm trying to say is that I had these images in my mind, but they were not supported because not having digital cameras at that time or not having a lot of images. But in my mind, this is what I've seen, but I was kind of like a little bit timid or not, didn't want to use that yellow because everybody said no, but then I ended up using what I wanted to use. So, but this here, by the way, this is all fabricated, this is enamel, and every tile or terracotta tile you see in there was hand soldered, placed in there. That took about 150 hours of work. That lid by itself is about 150 hours of work, and there's like a design underneath in which I don't have an image for here. This here is called Do You Want Some Rose Water? The town I come from, and they are very well known for making rose water, and anytime you go visit them or you're hanging out with people, whatever, instead of serving you pop or some kind of weird drink, they serve you rose water, and it's kind of like very fresh and clean and healthy and whatever, but this is, kind of, the idea is you put the rose water on top of there, or the rose, and you pour water through there and kind of filtering and adding rose water to the mix. The last one I have here is Too High for Me. This here is about 20 inches high. This was an undertaking to create a mold for. But all of the vessels that you guys saw, and I'm not gonna bore you with all the molds or whatever, but the amount of mold making or work it took to create all the molds for me to be able just to pour the concrete in there in a matter of 10-15 minutes and have it done was insane. Like, I literally was working, I don't know, like almost 18 hours a day to make all this work. But this here, the last one here, which you could see in a more detailed shot, that this very organic looking or cellular looking concrete, which these areas, like from here to here, about 5 to 6 millimeters. This is thin. But to be able to pull the mold out of that, I actually gave up for about 2 or 3 months because I couldn't find a solution to make a mold to make this work. But one night I was sitting, I don't know, on my computer, and I was designing something else, And I guess it just clicked in my mind how I'm gonna make it. So I ended up staying till like 2 or 3 at night, trying to design the mold, which I did, then I put it on a printer, and then the next day I was able to pour concrete in it, and my idea of how to make the mold for this worked, and I was able to make the vessel. This here was, this was done in 2019, 2020, and as Kirk has mentioned, this was acquired by the MAD, or Museum of Art and Design in New York. I really like this piece because I kind of envisioned it all in my mind. I wanted to make it happen, and I kind of didn't know how to make concrete curve this way, but eventually I was able to make it to work, and it's, I really like it. But once I did it, I ended up making another piece that is called 3 Degrees of Degradation. I got invited for the Boris Pally. He does a Imagine piece, shows they take decommissioned guns, and they give it to artists, and you break it down, or you can use it as a whole or whatever, and make an art piece from it. And it says 3 degrees of degradation because the idea is anytime there is a shooting of any kind, there are 3 categories that are affected, in my opinion. There's obviously the person who got shot, their immediate family, and the community around them. And they are all usually are a whole, right? But then when they are shot or killed or whatever, they are broken in some sense. So you'll see that all of these circles are broken at the edges there, and obviously they are varying in size because, from the person to the community, but that's the idea behind this. Which, basically, I've done a few more other pieces after that, but during that time, if you guys remember, I mentioned that, I have a little bit of OCD, right? So, and I like things to be done perfect or whatever. So when I was, I had a toolbox, like everyone, I believe, has a toolbox if you're a jeweler or a metalsmith or whatever. And we all had these saw blade things that we have, and they are always, getting mixed together or whatever. So one day I decided, I'm like, you know what? I am gonna figure out a way to make a container for this, which I did. And when I made this, I just, made it, and I kind of put it in, I made one for myself, and I put it in my toolbox, and I didn't really show it to anyone, and I just had it for 2 years with me. I think I did it in 2017, and not till September of 2019, I was like, maybe I'll put this on Facebook. I don't know, maybe I can get a couple orders, right? So I put it on Facebook at, I think it was like 8 o'clock or so at night, and 2 at night, I'm still answering people because I got like 33 orders. I didn't have a system. I had to create an Excel sheet. It was just crazy. I had to take the post down so people can stop ordering this little tool. Which at the beginning I was like, okay, maybe it's just a fluke, whatever. But it wasn't. It spiraled out from creating this, and I kind of started talking to a couple other companies, and it kind of like kept on going and going, and 20,000 units later, now I have a full legit company that I make all these other tools that I sell, and it helps the jeweler in their work, or at least I hope it does, okay? And it allows you to organize your tools and makes it work. And what allowed me to make this so easily and simple is the fact that I was able to use 3D printers as my little minions, right? Like they would work for me 24/7. I was lucky enough to be able to write a little bit of a code that allows me to print and eject, so I don't have to be available next to the printer. Like I literally legit have the printers working for me in Michigan, and they are working right now, and they are printing and ejecting the part while I am here. and allows me to do this. Because for instance, this piece here, it takes almost 6 days to make. So that's a lot, right? The other pieces that you saw here, like this one, takes 12 hours. So, they take time. If it ends at 1 o'clock at night, I'm not gonna leave home and go to that, because now I have about 48 3D printers that are all in the office and generate a lot of heat. So, and again, this kept on going, and it took me a little bit away from the work that I'm doing. And not to say that I'm not still doing work, I am, but it's not as full force as it used to be. But it's just, now it's an animal by itself, and it's going really well. This is my newest 2 designs: needle file holder and organizer, and drill bit, twist drill bit holder. And I even branched out to make, I don't know, like a Apple cord holder that works really well. And it's, you're able to use it or whatever, and I sell it on Amazon. But this is basically the setup that I have. There's 2 more walls. There's one wall on the left-hand side and one behind it that have that. And you could see like how I have buckets, and I put, improvised, and I put a piece of paper in there, so when the printer ejects it, it falls on the paper and then falls on the bucket. So yeah, I mean, this kind of is going really well, and I'm working on now, all my product that I sell, it's with the big companies like Stellar, Rio, Pepe Tools, not Halstead yet, but maybe soon. Autofray, and they all have it. And I do have it on my website. So if you are interested, for the SMG people, you get 15% off if that interests you. And if it doesn't work, please let me know. But you could definitely use that, and it helps you organize and make things better. But on a side note, like, this is all I have to do is show you what I do for fun sometimes. I have a daughter and a wife, right? And my daughter, I make a birthday cake for her every year. We kind of go crazy a little bit with the theme, and it varies, you can definitely see the progression, right? Like, you can see Mickey Mouse Club when she was 3 years old, then like Friends Lego, then LOLs, then princesses, rainbows, whatever, what's it called?
Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing, see, I forgot. But Animal Crossing, and this was last year's, which we got a cat, so we made a cat, and this year she was into Rubik's Cube, so we did that. But, and one note on this, if you ever ask a confectioner or a cake maker to make you a cake, and they ask you like, oh, it costs $200 or $300, pay them $200 or $300. It's a lot of freaking work. Like, by the end of the cake, I'm like, Sarah, this is the last year we're doing this, and the next year we'll do another one. But it's like, it's a lot of work. But it's fun. I enjoy it. I only do it for her. Like, I had tons of people ask me to do the cake. I'm like, you're not worth it. No one is worth it. Like, I would not spend 2 days to make a cake, and for you to pay me $200. No, it's not. It's not worth it. But this is all I have. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and thank you. Questions?
Did you bring some tools with you?
I did, but not here. I brought,
We'll have them tomorrow?
I'll have them tomorrow at your shop, yes. I brought them to your shop,
Teaching a class
actually.
tomorrow.
I'm sorry?
You're teaching a class tomorrow.
I am teaching a class tomorrow at Dana's, at the concrete class if you're interested.
How many spots are left, Dan?
I don't know.
We'll make a space for you, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. We'll camp outside, we'll do it outside. I'm sorry?
You brought plenty of things.
If there's anything that
I didn't bring, so I'm obviously coming from Michigan, and I brought a lot of concrete samples for the shop tomorrow, so I didn't bring a lot, but I have I have some here, but I have free shipping, so if you're interested, just order it with a 15% on every item. It doesn't matter what you're ordering, you'll get free shipping still. So,
Including a birthday cake, is that it?
So what's the workshop? It's like one day.
yes.
When you make the vessels and shoot them, there's rebar inside. Is that when you build it, or do you add that afterwards?
The rebar.
The rebar.
Great question. Both ways. I've done it both ways. For instance, the first vessel, the one that has blue and white, that I included it after, because that one had gold and silver in it. Okay. The grandma's gate, the one that had like that fancy lid on top, not the yellow one, the other one, I could probably show it to you, but that one actually, I had to create a very, very complex mold, because I had to create the mold, build the whole structure of rebar, put it in there, then be able to close the mold after I put the rebar, right? And without any of the concrete leaking in, and then putting the concrete, taking the mold out, putting the whole thing together, then shooting it. So yes, I've done it either way. And here's the weird part. Once you do the second process, which is putting the rebar in, obviously it's called rebar and they use it for a reason, the vessel strength increases exponentially. I'm talking that piece, I believe I shot 6 times with a 20 gauge to get, to get some of the damage that I was looking for, because it was so strong. Like I would hit it and it would just, like the bullet would go through and the rest of it stayed strong. Like it wouldn't break. So I shoot it again and it wouldn't break. I'm sorry?
Bullets, not BBs or pellets.
So I've used, yes, I've used BBs, BB gun, and I've used 20 gauge bullets, yes. It was very secure, very, careful of it, and luckily, Tom, you would have a big 40-acre land or house there, and at that time we were like, why don't you come to my land and we'll do it there, so we did that. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, I noticed there's not much aggregate in the concrete that you're using. Can you talk about the material that you used and how you came upon that material?
Yes, so I came on it because of Jim Carter when he came and did the presentation. Yes, I'm not using aggregate. It's called rockite. It's not a secret. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But rockite is it's kind of like typical concrete shrinks by 1 or 2%. This expand by 1 or 2% because it's an actual anchoring concrete, right? So it allows you to. It sands really, really nicely. It sands so well that I have to scale back the sanding, meaning I don't go above 250 or 400 grit. Anything above that, it will start looking like plastic. So that's how, I have a couple samples for me where I sand it down, and as soon as you put on it any kind of finishing surface like wax or oil or whatever, it's so smooth it will look like plastic. It will look so clean and very shiny. And I didn't want that. I want it to look concrete. I want it to look chalky. Yeah. Yes.
So you make molds, but are your molds reusable?
No. No, they are not. So this is. Making the molds is there's a whole science behind it, right? Like there's so many ways to make molds. The reason I was able to do what I was able to do is because I would first create the vessel shape in CAD, right? Then I will print it because that allowed me to examine it, look at the shape, the angles physically. Is it nice? Do I like it? Am I going to enjoy looking at it for a certain period of time? And once you do that, and I like it, I was like, okay, now I'm going to go with this design, this model, and I kind of envisioned like, okay, I might shoot it here, I might break it here, whatever, and I want to add these extra details. Like in some of the areas, like I'm just gonna go back really quick. Like if you notice here, like this one, I mean, you could see this is a spout here that's been shot and broken frayed. There's like the spout holder here. This is a nut with a bar that is going from here to holding the whole thing together. So there's tons of metal detail in there that making this whole thing come to life. And there's like the window there where it's, this is watertight, you know, like you could put water in there. Like this is broken and shut, but there's a wall down here, right? You could put water in it. So, making once I decide on the design, that's when I go back again in the computer and now I start creating the outside shell that will be the actual mold. And then I will print that. Once I print that, I will put concrete in it, and then I will peel off all the plastic or PLA material to get the concrete. But the trick is sometimes, for instance, like take, for instance, this one here. So this is closed from the bottom, right? So if I have an inner wall inside, I'm not able to take the concrete out. So this has 3 sections to it. This is section number 1, hence this line of brass here, right? This is line number 2, and all of these are connected with rebars from the inside with, I think I used JB Weld for this, but JB Weld holding everything together really tightly and nice in there, and then that's what happened. But talking back to the mold, this piece here, this was all done in one pour. This whole thing was done in one single pour, and this is about yay big. And here's the issue with this one. From the top here, it's very thin and small, and the bottom here, it's also thin and small, right? So I cannot pull the inside. So and then if you know anything about molds, you'll know like the sections here has to be connected. So the way I was able to overcome this is by making a design where, although it's connected, but it wasn't actually physically connected, meaning there was about 3/10 of a millimeter gap between the first wall and the second wall, right? So concrete will not be able to go through, and if it did, I could just put my finger and I will break it. But at the same time, it didn't weld, and all I had to do is just peel the outside and then heat the inside and peel the inside, and it came up. And it took me forever to figure out that would be the way to make this happen. But yes, they are all made out of printed, and you could not use them after you destroy them. Yeah. Anyone else?